Hey guys, welcome back to my channel again. I hope you enjoyed the first video ever. Here's to my second. Right, so today I'm going to focus on complexion. My skin type is quite normal, but I would say it's more on a dehydrated side because it tends to get very, very glowy as the day goes on. So most people, when they're looking at their own skin and they notice that they produce quite a lot of oil throughout the day, they would then go into a shop or to a makeup artist and explain that they have oily skin. But that isn't necessarily true. So finding out what your skin type really is very, very important. Therefore, I've prepared my skin. First of all, I love this product. I use a lot of Dermalogica on my skin. This is a redness relief essence. I just put a tiny bit into my palms. It soaks in real super fast, and then I press it all over. And then I use an oil-free moisturizer. So one of my favorites is the NARS Skin. This is a gel formula. So let me just grab a little bit to show you, because I'm going to put a bit more on. So like so, like that. And I mean, it's so refreshing. Like when I go on holiday and take this with me, I put it in the fridge so that it's really, really nice and cool when I pop it on. So I always apply my moisturizer by rubbing it into my palms, but I avoid my eye area. So gel base goes on, and then I use an eye cream, which once again is from NARS. I love their skin range. Now the reason why I love this eye cream, here it is. Yeah, that's not gonna, yeah. Is because its texture is really much thicker. So I apply it on my eye cream to this bone here. And the eye cream will naturally kind of like rise up, rather than putting it too close to your under eye and then worrying that you are getting it in your eye. I think that was something that I used to do a lot in my 20s, and then stupidly enough it put me off using eye creams, and I would not use eye cream. I'm now 35 and I wish I would have used an eye cream in my 20s. So yeah, it's so soothing when this goes on because it's quite a thick texture, like I said. Now I tend to then just take the excess, rub it on my fingers, and I just smooth it over that top area. Preparation for your foundation for anything that you're going to be putting on as a complexion base is crucial. It will determine how long the makeup lasts. It will determine how the makeup looks. It is the most important part to makeup application. So in terms of base, like I've already spoken about my skin type, I will still always tend to go for products which are more glowy, more radiant. And the reason for this is, it is much easier for me to control oil or to control radiance, as opposed to me trying to control dry or textured skin. So the more moisture you can get onto that skin, the smoother it will look, the longer it will last, and you will just be able to control it a lot better. I have friends which used to always do the classic of wearing like really heavy foundations, which were super strong coverage, controls oil, because the higher the coverage, the more oil control you do tend to get with it. But then what they would tell me is like, but Hannah, my pores always show, or it starts cracking as the day goes on. And it's all down to the fact that the formula that they'd chosen wasn't quite right for their skin. So or they hadn't prepped right for their skin. I can go into that a little bit later on as well, because by all means, if you love to wear a full coverage foundation and something a lot heavier, or your skin naturally is very, very oily, then so be it. But there are still ways that you can go around it by using a different type of moisturizer underneath it. So for example, if I was using something that was a lot stronger and a lot heavier in coverage and more oil control, I wouldn't be using a gel base moisturizer underneath it. I would probably be using something much more rich and had more glide to it. So I am using a rather bougie foundation at the moment, which is the Pat McGrath. Yeah, 60 quid a bottle. doesn't come cheap. Pat McGrath is well known in the backstage kind of environment on all of the fashion shows, and the skin that she produces on those shows is that supermodel skin, which is really flawless, but still and still quite glowy. So this foundation is actually a very high coverage, but you can't really detect the product on the skin. Now notice I haven't put a primer on. I kind of have a funny relationship with primers. I feel like they have been missold a lot in the past, and they kind of annoy me for that reason. So with a primer, I have two kinds of primers in my kit. I've got a very glowy, very radiant primer, which I use for people that lack radiance, and I have a primer which controls oil for people that have very oily skin. Never am I using the primer to keep the makeup on for longer, or make it smooth, or do any other magical things that it says it does on the bottle. I'm only using it to control the outcome of the skin. Now, I use my hands to apply my foundations, any base that I'm using. And notice how it's in the middle of my hand. It's keeping it quite warm, and I'm able to get a much smoother, much softer blend. So I always start middle of the face, and you may notice as well that I'm really quite brutal when it comes to applying makeup on myself. I'm very kind of like strong with my application. I like to work the product and create heat. So I'm not looking at it as though, oh, let's put a pretty layer of makeup on there. I'm really working it into the skin. So I start on that middle section, and then each time I kind of work my way out. So the reason why I do those dots like that is because I want to kind of put a framework of where I'm going. The reason for me starting in the middle of my face as opposed to anywhere else is because that is the majority tone of the skin. So notice now how I'm patting over the top. So I've got an even coverage of product. I just want to make sure that it sits kind of smoothly. So with the skin, I really like the skin to look like skin as opposed to like makeup. So I always say to women, we are the exact same underneath it all. I think when we are not wearing makeup and we're looking at ourselves without any makeup, we think that we are some goblin and every other woman is beautiful underneath the makeup, but we're all literally the same. My biggest concern for myself is uneven skin tone, so I tend to have a lot of redness. So yeah, we've all got them things that we focus on and we dislike about ourselves, but nobody really notices it. Right, so now what I'm doing is I have redness around this area here, so I'm just gently working a bit more coverage over the top of that. And then round here, I tend to get more texture, like the skin seems to have more enlarged pores. So I'm working the product, but my hands aren't rubbing along the skin. I'm kind of like warming it into them areas and then patting it in. Same thing over this side, just get rid of that. So basically you're looking for any like I always explain like in the other videos, is you're trying to create a nice blank canvas. So nothing too heavy, but just without any shadows or distortions in the way, so that you can essentially create a new face. So up on the forehead, I've got a tan at the moment because we had some lovely weather. So my forehead has a darker area around the edge of it. So I've placed foundation there and not even that much. And then what I do is I just very gently brush it out, but there's no makeup going up here. Now, if you do tend to have something that you need to cover up there, then by all means take it up, but very gently each time, just take it a little bit further. Don't apply the product right here because you won't have anywhere to take that product to. So that's how you'll end up with a hairline full of makeup and things like that. And you want the skin to look real. So if we were to take makeup all the way around the edges, it would be a very definite look of makeup, so you kind of want it to dissolve by the time it gets to here. I'm actually quite happy with this amount. Now the main places where I check on myself is around the nostrils. We tend to get more redness around there, and then on the under eye as well. I'll go back there. So I've just got a bit more on my hand. So I'm literally just going to take it up to the under eye. Now, yes, I'm going to be using concealer there, but I think it helps to have that little bit of base under there as well. Also, some days I don't want to do concealer as well, so I'll just wear foundation on the under eye. But yeah, it just helps neutralise some of the tone, some of the under eye. It's not going to get rid of it completely, but it will get rid of some of it. I have quite see-through eyelids as well, so I tend to put a tiny, I don't know whether you can actually see how much I'm putting on, but each time I'm taking like the smallest amount, and then on my top, what is that? On my top lid, I'm literally like, I want to still see what I'm covering. So nothing is perfect, and I don't particularly think that we should completely eliminate everything off your face. Like, let the true character of areas come out, and I think that's okay. With the end bit that was left on my hand, I've just warmed it up like so, and then what I do is, like I said, around that nostril area, I just put it in. Now I go really super easy on this area here. I don't want too much product there. I always find that when you put too much product there, throughout the day it just keeps getting more and more, and then you end up with a foundation moustache. And if you do have hair there or anything like that, it will grab to the hair and look really visible. So I tend to avoid that area. Very gently I'll brush it through, but I don't really go too heavy. Perfect. So foundation is on, and it should really be quite uniform. My body is much darker at the moment, but I'm not really worried, because you can do the rest of that with bronzers and things like that, and you're going to see what I do with it. Perfect. This foundation is so light, like you can't feel it on the skin. It's very comfortable to wear, and you can see that the skin actually has quite a nice amount of glow on there as well. So thanks, Pat. Right, concealer. So I tend to, you'll hear a lot of things about women saying, right, do I need a corrector? Do I need this? Like, yeah. So what a corrector essentially does is it's correcting a tone which shouldn't be there. So for example, my under eye is quite blue. It's got blue purple tones to it. So therefore, if I was to use something more like an orange or a peach or a red, that would warm up the blue tone, which is cold, and it would neutralize it so that it would come in the middle to a neutral tone. So it's neither warm nor is it cool. Yes, that's essentially what a corrector would do. And then a lot of women will then go and put a concealer on over the top. Now, it is quite a lot of makeup to be putting on your under eye. Under eye especially me, like I'm mid-30s, it can't handle too much product. I will look about 80 by the time I'm done. However, so I do use the Radiant Creamy Concealer from NARS in Honey. Now, Honey is quite a pink tone, but literally I will take a tiny bit of this one first, and I put it right into those blue areas, which for me is right in the corner of like here, and when I'm doing eye looks, it will tend to make that corner area look really quite dark. So I just take that away using Honey, which is a concealer, but I'm using it as a corrector, and I mean a really, really thin amount, because I'm going to put a concealer. I don't want loads of product on my under eye and then look like 90. Take away that. I get a blue area here as well, so I kind of like just blend that in, and you can kind of see that one just looks a little bit more refined now. The motion that I'm using is like a like tapping, so like that. not like that. Every time when you're doing that, you're just pulling the product off. It's also really rough on your eye. Right, that's good enough for that amount. Now, I could then go on and use the same style of product, so Radiant Creamy Concealer from NARS again, but just in a different colour. But I'm going to use the Pat McGrath concealer. Right, so I've already corrected that very, very under eye. So what I'm now going to be doing is adding a few dots just lower down to where my under eye is, and then tapping that through and joining it to the under eye. So this is how you would kind of get that no makeup, but with the right amount of coverage, rather than relying on just your foundation to do all of the work. Go lighter in a foundation. So when I say lighter, I mean in weight. So a much thinner foundation, even a tinted moisturizer is a better ideal, and then do the rest of the work with the concealer. It makes the world of difference, because you will feel like you're less like mashed up with makeup. Great word. Perfect. So dot, dot, dot. So 3 tiny dots, because I'm scared mainly. Oh God. So that's where I get my redness. So I always have like this little pair of red sunglasses on. So every time I pat it, you can see it spreading out. What this does as well is it kind of makes the face look a lot more structured. So it will support what your bronzer is going to do, and it will just bring this part of the face forward. See that I'm kind of joining that up into the under eye. But when I come close up, you can't see the product. It still looks like skin. Now, I want a tiny bit more on this side. Perfect. Lovely. And then anywhere else where you kind of feel like, oh, why is that red compared to there, or something like that, you can just put a tiny little dot, or anywhere where you know that you need a little bit more coverage and a little bit more confidence on your skin. You could just go ahead and pop a little dot here and there. So after you've kind of got that coverage that you want, you're ready to essentially just go on and set. I tend to set my eyes on my under eye with a different powder to what I set my face with. The reason for that is with under eye powders, they're a lot thinner, so you won't get as much lines or wrinkles. You are always going to get lines under the under eye if you have lines already. If you're younger and you haven't got them yet, then that's fine. You can put as much powder as you want on your under eye. But I'm never going to not set my under eye, and the reason being is I would prefer that than to have like gloopy mess. And it makes me think to explain why I set my makeup. A lot of women, without realizing it, touch their face all the time, and every time you do that, it's transferring over to your fingers or your phone or anything like that. So by the end of the day, you've only got a nose with makeup on it and the rest is gone. So the reason for me setting my makeup is it will not change all day. The only thing that changes about it is that it might get more glowy, but that's what I want. The under eye powder that I'm using currently is Pat McGrath Labs. It's very, very thin. So this is see-through, it's not white. It's very, very thin. Like when you touch it, you cannot feel anything. And that's what you're looking for when you're choosing a powder. When you take the powder onto your hands and then rub it together, it should feel like nothing, rather than the feeling of dryness. So yeah, you're looking for something that feels like air, basically. So I use this one on my under eye and maybe around other areas of my face because I really like it, and I've checked for flashback and it doesn't flashback. And then I use the Pat McGrath normal skin fetish powder all over my face as well. I've also got the Pat McGrath brushes, which I tend to use because of the shape of them. They're so small that I can fit them perfectly into that area for setting my under eye. So that's what I'm going to do now. Pick the product up. Now, when you're setting your makeup, you do not want to take the brush everywhere. You can see that powder visibly on my under eye, and that's okay because I then push it away. So once you've popped it on and you know that you've really worked it into the skin, then you can move the brush. But if you go straight into the skin and start doing that, you're going to just move the foundation everywhere. So you really want to just push it on top as opposed to brushing it on top. Make sure as well before you set your under eyes that everything is in place and you're not going to set any harsh lines or anything in there. So now I'm going to swap brushes and I'm going to go to a slightly bigger brush. So this brush I tend to go for a lot, and the reason for it is that it's in a kind of dome shape, and that will make sense on the next few steps. So with this one, the bristles are long enough for me to get a more gentle application, as opposed to, for example, something like this guy here. These bristles are quite short and fat, so it's going to be a very heavy application. I want something a little bit lighter. So I'm going to be using the Pat McGrath powder. This normally has a guard on it, but I've taken it off because I don't take my makeup in my bag anyway, so it's always at home. So what I would normally do is tip the product upside down, get the product out, take both away from each other so that the product is like that, and whatever's in the lid is what I'm going to use, and then I can just do that again if I need more. So load the brush up and like really work it in there, and then we're going to start again, and we're just pushing, not swooshing. You can see like a little smoke bomb coming off of my face. I just went and got more product then. I love powder. But it's weird because if you see me in real life, you wouldn't think that I used powder because I'm so glowy. So really pushing it in, and make sure that you're getting every single area, especially areas that you know that you get a bit more shiny. So notice now how I'm buffering it away. So it looks like I'm going really heavy, but I'm not. Because the bristles are quite long, it gives me a little bit of give when I'm going on the skin. Buffering it away. Now, even though I didn't put foundation down here, I still take the powder down there because I will generally join my bronzer in down there. And if there's any moisturiser or anything, what I don't want is the bronzer to grab on those areas and you get what is called a muddy face. It just looks really yucky. Then kind of stroke my face, and my hand is going over the skin really, really easily without it sticking. So I know that I've set my skin well enough. So you can tell now that I've gone quite matte, but it doesn't bother me in the slightest because the products that we've put underneath are going to come through. So once your skin kind of wakes up, it will stop them powders from looking so powdery. It just needs to settle, that's all it is. However, I have a little trick. So this is a trick that I've done for quite a few years now. So this is Laura Mercier and this is Candlelight Glow. But this basically is, it's got a slight shimmer to it. But you can use this on its own and it gives you like a makeup look, no makeup look, but it's literally always been my holy grail for many, many years. So I'm using the same brush. So this time I'm kind of like placing the brush so that I get the colour on the sides rather than like that, because you're not really going to pick anything up. And I'm going to start with the brush kind of laying like that on my head. I'm going to start just very gently sculpting it in. So I'm kind of like buffering over the top. So it's giving me a tone, but do you see how it's given me a skin kind of finish? Which is kind of what we want. Is that quite even? Now, even though I'm going through the middle, I'm kind of very gently going through the middle. And the first place that I'm touching is here or here, and then I'm going through the middle. So it's not like directly straight into the middle. Perfect. And that essentially is your base done. So you end up with skin that looks like skin, but it's really quite flawless. And when you look from different angles, we don't have a very definite line or any muddiness or anything like grabbing on. You can notice as well that even without a bronzer, without a blusher, I've still got like a lighter area through the middle, and my face as well, when I move it, feels like my face. It doesn't feel heavy or anything like that. So I hope that has helped. It is a question that I get asked constantly, which is how do I make my foundation look more natural? So it really does come down to the steps you're taking beforehand. So the skincare, knowing your skin, you need to really get to grips with what your skin does, and then acting accordingly with it. Choosing the right foundation, the right base, whether that means that you're going to go for something much lighter as opposed to a foundation. You might want to go for a tinted moisturizer over a foundation and then use more concealer. That's my preference on applying base. And also using your hands, it is a game changer if you can get used to it. And then picking your powders well, picking something that doesn't have that chalky grippiness to it, and pushing the powder into the makeup as opposed to swirling it everywhere and moving the makeup around. Any questions, just pop it in the comments for me or send me a message. But yeah, hope that's really helped, and I'll be back soon.